Already.
Did it. Go live.
Don't pay any attention. I need to do the countdown. Hang on. Good evening, fellow heretics. Welcome to tonight's show. I'm your host, Captain Dadpool.
I'm Natty Nat.
And you are watching Nerds and Heresy.
Hold on to your butts.
All right, so tonight we are joined with the one and only Dave Warnock and the legend himself, Seth Andrews. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing well.
I'm good.
Thanks for
We're
having
so
us.
professional.
Appreciate y'all agreeing to come on. Each of you had a book come out fairly close together, and I'm trying to read both of them at once.
Combine them and you'll get really the full experience. Just sort of juxtapose the chapters, stop at the end of one sentence and start the next. Well, Dave, I had a chance to read Dave's book, and what I like about it is that as he's chronicling his own journey, you hear a lot of people who write about their own lives. And some of this stuff, we call it vanity press. It comes out and it just feels kind of self-serving and uninteresting. A lot of people are like, well, why do I care about your life? That sounds really cold. But I mean, if you're talking about a planet with so many people, how many people have an interesting story to tell? What I liked about Dave's book is that it's, it's very intimate. It's very transparent. It's very candid. It's very vulnerable. But even though his life is different than mine, I wanted to find out what happened next. And I think that's the mark of a good storyteller, So Dave, he didn't ask me to do this. He's not slipping me $50, but I just thought it was a compelling journey through a guy who was, I thought I was hardcore Jesus. Warnock's got me beat by a freaking mile. You were a Jesus freak,
Yeah, if you didn't speak in tongues, I didn't take you seriously.
I didn't speak in tongues. You were that guy. You were the, hey, I'm going to sell all my stuff and go out and spread the gospel. I wasn't quite that committed.
I gave 2 cars away in my Christian experience. Because God told me to. So Seth wrote a very, very nice blurb on the back of the back of the book, and he was
you should see it. Dave done right good is what I said on the back.
Yeah,
and I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Dave done right good. He wrote, and I quote, "This book doesn't suck," and that was the best blurb I could get from anybody.
That is high praise.
High praise. No, seriously, Seth was kidding if you juxtapose the books together, but truly, I probably say some dumb shit in my book that would fit into Seth's book, because that's how I thought and spoke in those days. So you could read my book and then hear some of the things that I said and just pick them right up out of Seth's book. Christianity makes me sound like an idiot.
Yeah, wouldn't it be interesting to grab all of the quotes that Christians use against atheists that the atheists once used while they were Christians and put that in a complication of books?
Yeah.
I think that would be really interesting. Just side note. Anyway.
It's one thing that's really funny on TikTok is having people like Christians respond to my videos and make videos about things that I've said and be like, no, that's not how we interpret this verse. And I'm like, I know how you interpret that verse. I used to interpret it that way too. And then I found out I was wrong. So this is awkward.
I was going to promote our conversation, let everybody know to be here on Facebook, but I have been banned again on Facebook. Long story made extremely short. It's a few months ago, and I'd posted some tweak of the conspiracy COVID anti-vaxxer people, and I was satirizing them. Facebook didn't know the difference. I got a strike for 7 days for spreading COVID misinformation. So then it was January, And I was saying something reasonable about how ironic I find it that Christians resist the reality, the biological reality that they are animals. They are animals protesting that they are animals. Facebook sees this, and Facebook says, he's calling Christians animals. That's an insult. It's hate speech, 7-day strike. And of course, there's no really effective way to protest, and the volume of content that Facebook's navigating, you're a needle in a stack of needles. So I posted a few days ago a clip that Hemant Mehta from the Friendly Atheist had posted about a hate preacher in Texas who was holding literally to the Old Testament command that homosexuals should be executed. And he was preaching from the podium, that he thought gays needed to be killed. So I post on Facebook a link to the clip and I say, we must condemn this hate speech. Facebook strikes it as hate speech, 30-day ban. I go through and I do see a disagree with decision button. There's no context. I'm not able to explain myself. And I have some of my activist friends raise a stink on social media. Within the hour, it's reversed with an apology. We are so very sorry. We got this wrong. We're doing our best. Okay, fine. This morning, the same post from 3 days ago was again flagged as hate speech. I'm on a 30-day ban with a warning that your page, the Thinking Atheist Facebook page, is at risk of being unpublished for so many violations. So, I mean, I've got a community of several 100,000 people. I can't decide if it's an algorithm problem, a context problem. Is there somebody who was pissed off about the title of my new book or my activism and they're falsely flagging everything? But it's been just a ride. So you caught me at an extremely agitated moment in my life. So.
We might get the angry. We might get the angry Seth. This is.
I was going to say we're going to get angry atheist Seth tonight.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's actually a really good segue, because Seth, I was wondering if you would do me a favor. Let's see if I can figure this out and read off this this paragraph that is from your book.
Oh. Wow, reading me. That'll be wild. I can be hard on Christianity and my younger Christian self, but I haven't lost my empathy for people. I found the ability to distinguish between smart people and stupid behaviors because I once fit the model. In fact, I've come to learn how adept intelligent people can be at rationalizing the irrational, especially outsmarting themselves into opinions and actions that make no logical sense. Human beings are complex, fascinating creatures that don't fit into a box. And this is true for the religious as well.
Amazing. I really liked that paragraph because I found it very relatable. I have when it comes to Christians or the religious, I have like two moods. I'm either you were there at one point, you know what it's like, go easy on them. We're here to build bridges, not walls. And other days I'm like, fuck you, fuck your God, fuck your couch.
Yeah.
I try not to make videos on those days.
Hopefully Nat has some sort of she's an intervention. It's almost like they put you in a room and write a letter and read to you and say, this is why we love you. And we think you need to shut up for your own good. But,
I need that.
No, I mean, I think we've all been there. Like I have days when I'm up to in the red zone and I think I'm sick of it. I'm sick of these people. I'm sick of the damage being done and the harm that's being perpetrated. I'm tired of feeling like I'm screaming at a brick wall. I'm tired of the theocrats and the people who are hurting my fellow human beings. And then there are other days when I see them and I realize that, that many of them they're also victims. Yes, they're doing great harm, but they're also victims of harm. And, I run the spectrum as well. I think we can all relate to what you're going through.
Yeah, we have to remember we were once that person. I mean, I've heard you say, Seth, I wasn't an idiot when I believed these things. I wasn't any less smart than I am now. I wasn't stupid. I was just believing stuff that I'd been told was true, and I didn't check it out. I was indoctrinated in the truest sense of the word. So yeah, we have to be kind. We have to be kind to our former selves and to those who are still that person.
I think that's really hard in the extremely subgrouped tribal biosphere of social media, where people aren't just retreating into their groups, but their subgroups and their subgroups, and if somebody is wrong or different or whatever, they end up being othered to the point where they become an enemy. I said in the book, I didn't need to be destroyed. Or actually, I said this in an article I wrote recently about the atheist movement for Only Sky. When I was a devout evangelical with some really bad ideas, I didn't need to be destroyed. I needed to be rescued. And I feel that way about a lot of other people. But I'm like you guys. I fluctuate back and forth. I have my best days and worst days and everything in between. So,
yeah, that's...
Well, I don't ever get angry. So, yeah.
Shit.
Not what your book said, Dave. By the way, have either of you read Blue Like Jazz when you were Christian?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I got it.
Your book reminded me of that, Dave.
Oh really?
Like because like I really I still have an appreciation for the way that book was written, like as an art form, and the way it described like certain scenes like very vividly and made you feel like you were there living it with them. Your book does the exact same thing for me. So for some reason, it reminded me of that one.
Good. Well, that's what I was going for. So I'm glad it came through.
I've never read anything that you've ever written before, so I didn't know that you had this gift that was laying dormant.
Yeah, Dave done right good. I've been saying it for a couple of months now.
The book did not suck.
I'm gonna put that quote somewhere. Dave done
right good.
Yeah, or would it be Dave? It's past tense. Dave done wrote good.
Dave Dunn did written good.
Yeah.
Oh, now my head's all twisty.
Yeah.
Now my head's all twisty.
So what is what would be the most probably what would be the cringiest thing to reflect on now being an ex-evangelical ex-Christian for you guys? Like, what is the thing that just makes you want to rage quit every time you think, I can't believe I actually said this, actually said that, or believe these things? Like,
that's a strong
I know that's a tough
field. I don't know, Warnock. What I mean,
Well,
just to get the conversation rolling.
I think that the idea, and it's verbalized in different ways, but the idea that we're born broken, that we're born bad as a bad person that's worthy of some kind of eternal torment. We just came back from a beach week that a bunch of friends got together, and there was a young lady there from Seattle, and she came out of a very, very fundamentalist religion, and her and her husband both. She lost her husband to ALS, and I connected with her that way, but just a sweetheart. And she says that her pastor would hold up they would, baby dedications, right? Seth, remember those where you dedicate your young one to the Lord. And the pastor would hold up the baby and say something like, this is an 8-pound sinner right here. A precious newborn baby that's innocent as hell, never has done anything wrong. And their attitude, our attitude, the theology was that this is a born sinner that needs to be redeemed. And if when that mysterious age of accountability happens, which doesn't actually exist in the Bible, when that age of accountability passes, that baby has better repent or they're bound for eternal torment. That's horrendous, and it causes no small amount of torment and trauma. And I look back on that idea and I cringe. That's something I once embraced and taught.
That's a good one.
I wrote in my 2012 autobiography about Gracemont Baptist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I grew up. And I remember there was a specific service where they brought out very young children, and there was a kid who was 4 years old. And the pastor said, I know he's really young, but the age of accountability is what Dave is talking about, is the time in your life when you are able to properly understand God's message, supposedly. and you are able to take responsibility for your own moral decision making. And so they brought this 4-year-old. Of course, the kid wasn't old enough. He had never been to kindergarten. He, could barely read. He couldn't read or write. It would be 12 years before he was able to drive a car. It'd be a decade and a half before he was old enough to be drafted, or he'd have a job or a career or learn anything about the world. But somehow he was able to grasp the concepts of good and evil, God and Lucifer, heaven and hell, original sin, these types of things. And I remember being in the service at the time, and whenever they said the child had accepted Jesus and had avoided hell, everybody was like, amen. They thought it was a beautiful moment, and I was included. I thought, wow, he's rescued. He's going to see heaven. I remember thinking how beautiful that was. And now I just see it as a kind of abuse. It's funny when I run into evangelicals who give me that sort of pat on the head look. You poor man. You don't understand my Jesus. He is a God of love, not judgment, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, but then I get a little deeper into the conversation, and it becomes very apparent that they do hold, I was born a sinner, right?
Yeah.
The Bible says there is no one worthy. No, not one. It is not I, but Christ who lives in me. We see it in the exercise of baptism. We have to symbolically die to ourselves because we're so awful, and we must be risen again in Christ. And when I hear about people talking this language, which is really the language of the abused, I look at them and I say, it's interesting because I'm an atheist, but I think I've got a higher opinion of you than you may have of yourself, because I don't think you were born broken. I don't think you need to get your worth or value from somebody else. I think your life is worth living on its own terms. I don't think you would ever deserve hell. I think more of you, I think, than you might think of yourself. And it's interesting to see them pause, because many people don't know what to do with that statement. But, it's a non-combative way of telling them that there may be something wrong with their theology, which really is, again, an abusive way of looking at love.
Yeah, I've used that phrase talking to Christians. I had an evangelical on my show a few months ago, and at the end of it, I posed questions about heaven and hell and the theology therein. And he espoused a really problematic position on that. And I just said to him, you're a good guy. You're a good person, I can tell. And in fact, you're better than your theology. And he cringed at that as though I'd slapped him in the face.
Yeah.
And he couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept that he's a good person and didn't need to be saved. And because if he accepted that, then it kind of slaps the whole message in the face, and then they've got to start over. So they have to hold to that position.
I was talking to a guy. He's a father of 3, right? And he's a devout believer. And I said, all right, is there anything in this world that your child could do, even if they totally went off the rails and they had become an abuser, if they had just screwed their life up, is there any circumstance where your child would be so bad that you would feel the appropriate punishment would be to douse them in fuel and set them on fire? And they're just aghast.
Yeah.
There's I would never do that to anyone. There's no circumstance. And yet they have been so conditioned to switch that moral center off when it comes to Yahweh. I'm like, well, we're talking about the very same thing with your heavenly Father as an earthly child is set aflame. And then they spin off into, free will. It's a fallen world. God doesn't want to send you to hell. You send yourself to hell.
Oh, man,
that's a
don't get
whole
me
other
started.
series of conversations. But it's funny, because I think a lot of abusive relationships are trussed up in love language. But Yahweh is a domestic abuser, right? It's a good thing I love you, because you're not lovable. You are nothing. You get your value from me. I demand complete subservience and obedience. I will tell you who you are and what to do. Don't ever disobey me. Don't ever leave me, or you will be sorry. I will hurt you. And, this is straight up abuse language. And that's a hard sell when you talk to somebody who's part of these, especially these happy, clappy Joel Osteen, these experiential churches that have distanced themselves from Scripture, because they go in and they feel really good. But I'm like, well, the Bible itself doesn't change on this stuff. All you have to do is look, and they're just not looking.
Right. Yeah, they can't.
Yeah.
Sorry about the long answers. This is what happens when you ask a radio host to be a guest.
No, I love the long answers.
Everybody loves your voice, so we
like-
will just sit and listen and be happy about it.
You're like, Seth, and you tell me your opinion on this, and I'm like, well, back when the Earth cooled and dinosaurs roamed the Earth, and I just start way back at the very beginning.
Ask Seth what time it is. He'll tell you how the watch is made, right?
I will.
So
Thank
yeah,
you for the super chat, Greater Candle. I wanted to squeeze this in there. I've always been curious. Jesus didn't have the authority to baptize people. What makes Christians think they have the right?
I don't think Christians think of it in that context. Do you, Dave?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they think of baptism.
They probably think that
in terms of
Jesus
authority.
didn't need to baptize people. Jesus gave other people the authority to baptize.
I think the reality is that Jesus wasn't thinking he was starting a religion. Paul did that. Paul did that, as you know.
That's exactly right.
So, John the Baptist came along baptizing people and baptized Jesus, but Jesus, I don't think cared. I don't think he gave a shit about that. Assuming that he actually existed as portrayed in the Gospels. So he wasn't going around trying to save people. He was making disciples to follow him, but he wasn't trying to build a religion that was based upon baptism. That came later.
And if you go in the Old Testament, there is no references to baptism at all anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like baptism
Christ
is
did say to
entirely
the disciples that he was going to make them fishers of men. I guess that could be interpreted to kind of a great commission. But, then you get into, was there an actual man Jesus that the myth was based upon? And that's a very contentious argument. I just I'll throw like just a little piece of red meat out on Twitter just to watch people start to argue with each other. And I'll just leave the room. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
You're good at that. Yeah.
I'm rather guilty of that occasionally as well. So, hey, look, I'll just throw this cat out here and see what you say. See what happens.
I'm recording an interview with Dr. Bart Ehrman next week, and he's a big, Jesus was a literal guy, and he and the mythicists are always chewing each other to ribbons. And for me, I don't know. It's an interesting academic conversation, but as far as we can say the God man Jesus, we know that's not true, and that's really all that matters to me.
Yeah. Whether
was it a guy? Was there not a guy?
Not,
yeah. I don't know.
I'm ambivalent on that as well. I kind of think he existed and pissed off the Romans and got himself killed, but is obviously wasn't divine and obviously didn't raise from the dead. So whether the person Jesus existed or not is irrelevant to me.
That reminds me of another. Oh God, what was that line they used to give us from Sunday school about Jesus? First of all, they just assumed Jesus existed, so they said, well, he's either liar, something else, or Lord.
Liar, Lord, or
lunatic.
That's
the trilemma.
What was the last one?
C.S. Lewis. Liar, Lord, or lunatic.
Yes. Thank you for that.
That's a C.S. Lewis quote.
I like it.
Yeah. You ever heard that, really?
And they say it like checkmate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the religious equivalent of the fool says in his heart there is no God, which is like the equivalent of you're a poopy head. Is essentially what that's supposed to operate like.
Well, the problem with that quote
says you're a poopy head.
Yeah, the problem with that quote. Yeah, he gets nasty. He's a potty mouth. Yeah. The problem with that quote is that you're assuming that what Jesus purportedly said was actually said, and you're making a basic assumption with the starting point of that. And I guess the fourth part could be liar, Lord, lunatic, or legend, which would be more accurate.
Yeah.
I've heard that one as well.
I mean, there's a presumption, he obviously existed. He obviously did say these things. So
right.
He was either a false prophet, or he was crazy, or he legitimately is God,
Mm-hmm.
But, I wrote a chapter in Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot. And I mentioned this in the speech that the book was based on, about the fact that really one of our biggest challenges when it comes to countering these things is rampant Bible illiteracy.
Mm-hmm.
People, you've seen that meme, people Christianity is like a software license. They just scroll to the end and click I agree, but they have no idea what it says.
That's great.
I like
And they don't know. So if you just stop and ask them, and I tried the Socratic method, Jesus is written about in the Gospels. Who wrote Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John? Well, it was Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. And of course, they're written about in the third person. It wasn't Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John.
Mhm.
They were written long decades after the alleged life of Christ. And who wrote the book of Genesis? You believe in Adam and Eve in the garden and the tree. Who wrote Genesis? Nobody knows. They just
Right.
vapor lock.
Mhm.
And this is not a gotcha question. Like, this is not a clever question. This seems like, who wrote the foundational book of an entire religion? That seems basic to me.
Yeah.
And then to watch them just zone out, tilt, and then they treat you like you're the problem for asking them to source their material. And it's we get back to the frustration we were talking about earlier. Like, I'm talking to the air, I'm talking to a brick wall, I'm getting nowhere. Well, how did and then I have to remind myself that I believe in this same way, and I didn't believe for reasons of logic. I believe for reasons of emotion and indoctrination.
Yeah. And most of them do. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it's easier just to be a sociopath.
Yeah. I guess that's true. You
Well,
don't
what
have
a
to care about your,
solution. Thanks, Nat.
you don't have to care about your
Throwing
consequences.
out there. No, it's yeah.
Oh,
No,
man.
Well, I
don't-
see some
don't
good
like
questions in the
manipulate-
chat. Seth has a question in the chat
Oh,
about his
sweet.
wife.
Okay.
Oh, does he?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yes, I did see that. Where'd that go? Do. Sorry, I'm scrolling a little bit.
This will be like a deep dive, looking through my windows into.
Yeah.
the-
Appreciate you filling the space there, Seth, while I'm trying to find that.
think it's the
your
Sorry.
forecast. For today.
While-
Partly
While
sunny
you're trying to
skies.
find that, I've had.
Where'd
I
it
had-
go? There it is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Dave. You said your wife is a Christian. What does she think of your book?
Nat hasn't read it yet. She wouldn't mind me saying this. I'm not betraying a confidence. One thing I love about Natalie is that she is she professes Christianity, but she's not really. She thinks there's something out there. Like, we don't go to church. She doesn't want to go to church. We don't pray before meals. We don't, really engage. We have Christian symbols in the house. But, she was raised in a Christian tradition. So that's kind of the thing that she leans into. But, she will sort of lean into and borrow stuff from other religions that she kind of likes, and the spirit of grandpa's looking in, and somebody somewhere is burning the sage, and she'll find that romantic, whether or not she believes it or not. She enjoys that type
She's
of
a
stuff.
romanticist. I think that's sweet.
Yeah. But what makes her different from my fundamentalist Christian family is that Natalie doesn't look at me as a broken thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she respects my right to take my journey on my own terms, and appreciates the fact that I'm a good man who's trying to live his values. That even when she disagrees with me, let's say there's a point of theology, or maybe she's just more, I don't know, she's a little more accepting of some of the stuff I take a harder line on. My wife will come out and work a book table with me at a convention. She will help me, pack up 1,000 autographed copies of a book to mail out to people, because she knows that I'm doing what I care about. She thinks I have a legitimate gripe on a lot of issues, and she just wants to be a part of it, And, it does have its challenges. Sometimes it gets really hard, but I think all relationships can be really hard when it comes to things like that, If Natalie was a fundamentalist, we would never work.
Mm-hmm.
What makes it work is that hers is not a religion as much as it is the idea that there's something out there, something started it all. And if somebody wants to pray, great. Maybe there's somebody listening, whatever, she takes, again, a more conciliatory tone, where
Mm-hmm.
I tend to be a little more of a critic, and I have those conversations. But, I'm sure we'll get into the book, And there'll be some things she agrees with, disagrees with. But at the end of the day, she will know that it comes from a place of authenticity and respect and the desire to see goodness win. And that's what she'll take away. And, agree, disagree. I think I'm thankful for that. And I feel the same way about her. Like, I don't sit around trying to change Natalie. I don't love her because she does or doesn't believe in God. I love her because she's lovable. Our values are the same. And we both share life, and that's the most important thing. So.
Well, but if we're being completely honest, I think she comes in second place behind the dogs, though, right?
Don't you dare tell her that.
And she knows that, though, and she's made peace with that.
Bite your tongue. She has told me that I'm like a pushover with my dogs. And
oh my God, you are in. You guys, people can't believe it till they see it. This guy and his dogs. Oh my God!
I've turned into that crazy lady with the 8 chihuahuas.
But
I love you so much.
That's pretty much how you talk to them. Yeah. But to be fair, they are adorable. And
wait, are they chihuahuas?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, I can't judge you then.
But she is great. You guys are great together. And what I saw when I was there, I picked her brain a little bit, and she now when she does when you get to ranting, she would say, when Seth, comes down out of the studio and he's ranting and, rah, 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 and she's, oh, put a lid on it. And she goes in the bedroom and she's just not hearing it,
She's heard all my stuff before.
Yeah. No, she's great.
I've gotten better, Dave. When I've been doing this since 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And, probably the first half of this run, I spent a lot more time raging and arguing. And I mean, if somebody trolled me in the Twitter or in the comment on YouTube, or somebody posted something wrong, I would be that guy. The vein would pop out of my forehead and I'm mashing at the keyboard. They would retort and I say, well, that's just the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Here's the data. What's going on? Why don't you see this? This is so simple. A child could understand it. And when my family would do and say things that were hurtful, and when I felt that sense of disconnection and judgment, and they would say things like, you're embarrassing us, you're embarrassing the family, we have failed as a parent, you failed as a child, and whatnot, I would take those things and I was like a pressure cooker, I stewed inside. And I finally came to a point when I was like, I can't carry all these bricks, man. I just can't do that. So it's, now when Mom sends me, and she'll send me a random text about why the Bible is true and why this and why that, and come back to the faith. And, I see somebody else who baits me on Twitter with some inflammatory thing. I've learned mostly just to look at it, consider the source, decide how much oxygen do I want to give this? Will anything good come of my engagement? Will I become mentally burdened and emotionally burdened, even physically burdened by engaging and wasting my time? And the answer is usually no. And I've gotten better at flipping a switch and getting on with the work at hand, but it's not always easy,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm loving the back and forth between you two.
Oh, no,
it's brilliant.
He's my brother,
we don't have trouble talking, do we?
No.
Sorry, you may actually have questions. I'm sorry, we just kind of
I wasn't being sarcastic. I genuinely enjoy the back and forth.
It's funny because my parents, even my father passed away last June.
Oh, that's right.
But we weren't close, right? I mean, we were not close. I blame his superstition, right? The Bible, he would always like to quote the scripture about how there can be no fellowship with the unbeliever, and we couldn't enjoy the rest of our lives because my father was so convinced in heaven and hell that he thought unless the eternal question was solved, nothing else could be enjoyed. We have to fix this. We have to fix him. And it has helped to drive much of what I do, because I don't know about you, Dave, or even our hosts. I get correspondence from people all over the world, and the people who should have their back, people who should be right there, their tribe, their group, their family, their parents, their siblings, their children, their spouses
Mhm.
abandon them
Yeah.
over this thing, and they feel discarded in every way, and they reach out and say, I'm broken. And I'd like to think that one thing that we do, all of us do as activists, and I think this may be true for people in the chat, is that our job is to say, you're not broken and you have such value, and life's too short to live somebody
Mhm.
else's life.
Mhm.
And it's okay. And you're not alone. And there are more of us every day. Just keep kicking,
And that's why we do what we do, because we
Yeah.
hear from those people, as you said, all over the world. And it's not uniquely an American problem. We kind of tend to think it is, with Christian nationalism raising its ugly head. But these ideas exist all over the world, and people are hurting from them all over the world. But Seth, to your, you mentioned your dad, and I remember chatting with you during that time, and you were so, I don't think I told you this, but I've really felt like you were so gracious to them, because that distance was there and that hurt was there. But when the time came and your mom requested you sing play a song at the funeral, and a Christian song, by the way, a hymn. I know that wasn't it wasn't your favorite thing.
I didn't do that. I mean, I did speak at the funeral.
Oh, okay. I thought you were. I thought they asked you to play a song.
She asked me to play two of my father's favorite hymns.
Mm-hmm.
But my mother, I'm convinced, my dad was deaf.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't listen to music. It's possible he had favorite hymns, but I couldn't help but feel like my mother wanted the satisfaction of finally seeing her son on stage in public as an atheist activist playing Jesus music.
Mm-hmm.
And for that reason, because I really did suspect motives, I politely declined, and I said, what else can I do to be of service? I'm not comfortable in this position. And to their credit, they gave me an opportunity to stand on stage and say a few words about Dad. And it's funny because Dave, as everybody else was like, he was a man of Jesus. He carried Bibles in his trunk and he spread them everywhere. And he's Jesus, Jesus, God, God, Jesus. Nobody was talking about my dad.
Yeah.
Nobody actually painted a picture of the man. And so I went up and I was like, this is what he did. And this is how he laughed. And he used to tell a joke here. And I remember he wore these clothes. And I remember he used to mow the lawn wearing dress slacks. And he used to do this. And he had this old joke he told all the time, and we'd all heard it a million times. And literally, I wanted to spend 5 minutes painting a picture so that you could see my father in your mind, making the memorial about him instead of freaking Jesus.
Well, that's what I wish.
I was successful.
I wish they'd have given me the opportunity at my dad's funeral, because I wrote about this in my book. They painted the picture as though he were this fervent disciple of Jesus that prayed. He never cracked the Bible open. He only went to a church when there was a wedding or a funeral. Yeah. And yet at his funeral, he was painted out to be this patron saint. My brother preached the sermon, and I felt completely that he was preaching right at me, his atheist brother sitting there in the second row. It was horrible.
Huge passive aggression. I get it at the dinner table.
Oh, yeah.
We're all sitting here. I'm the only atheist. Everybody else is a hardcore evangelical. And somebody over here says to someone else, hey, did you hear about that news article that scientists have discovered more proof that evolution is totally wrong, and that the book of Genesis explains the origins? Well, and the other person's like, well, no, I find that
tell me more.
Please explain. Give me the details.
And Seth's like, biting his tongue till it's bleeding.
I'm like, I'm right here, people. I'm right here. Just look me in the eye.
Oh, God.
Whatever.
What's one of the craziest things to me, because I went to Bible college and graduated with a degree in theology. I was really involved in apologetics. One thing that's very cringy to me is not realizing that all of the science and everything that I was learning was from a Bible college, from apologists. Not scientists, mind you. I could look up the work of an astrophysicist, but no, don't go read that. That's evil. That's the work of the devil right there, trying to lead people away. You read the Bible and you listen to what we are saying, people who are defending the Bible as a profession. So that's something that was hard.
What's that famous quote that says the first thing a cult does is to tell you that everybody else is lying?
Mhm.
Yeah.
First thing a cult does.
Cut off outside information. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you stop the flow of information, you can control the people better.
Yeah. I was even discouraged from reading like other literature.
Oh, I
about these
came home
topics.
from a third grade homeroom and I was talking about Neanderthal man. Mom lost her mind. Like, that's not in the Bible. And she scooped all of us up and she took us immediately and planted us in Christian education all the way through my senior year. So threatened by other ideas and distrustful of science and scientists that, I think that I asked her once, I said, did you ever feel like you gave us a choice to like do some of our own thinking for all this? I mean, did you ever introduce us to other ideas? And she looked me in the eye with this sincere, tragically sincere look. And she said, well, I didn't need to. I already knew we had the truth.
God.
Okay. All right.
There
fine.
it is.
Well, I contend that that's part of the reason for the rise in deconversions is people have more access to information via the internet God gave us. So it's helpful.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get into that a little bit, the deconversion movement and the struggle that pastors are having with trying to figure it out. What is the reason this is happening? And they all have all these different theories. You see it on TikTok all the time. Oh,
that's about to crawl through the screen.
I don't understand what there is to figure out. People have more access to information. That's it. That's all it is.
They have to defend. They have to defend their narrative, Nat.
Say what?
They have to defend their narrative. It's because we want to go do sex things that we couldn't before. That's why.
They're losing their
Only why
shit.
I deconstructed. Absolutely. Had to go do sex things.
That's what they're all saying. Like,
the deconstruction thing is they're losing their shit. I posted a TikTok a few weeks ago on that deconstruction thing that they're losing their shit, and you won't get ready for it, Captain. I got like 12,000 views. I know you've never gotten that many on TikTok, but yeah,
no, never.
It went viral.
That's huge for you though.
It is huge for me, yeah, because I've got like 4,000 followers, and but no, it was odd how that particular. I usually get 700 or 800 views. I'm not a good TikToker. I don't even. I point the camera at me and talk for 60 seconds. That's it. I don't edit. I don't put any shit on it. I'm terrible. But I just didn't want to get left behind. Seth, get on TikTok. Come on.
I just started. I don't have anything posted, but I just created an account 3 days ago.
There you go. Look out, world. Here comes Seth.
I don't know what to do with it. I'm gonna have to go close my
theology.
I have trouble managing. Like, what am I going to do with my MySpace account now? It's just really difficult for me.
You can close it up. Aren't you going to interview some TikTokers at the convention, Seth?
I don't know. Maybe.
So there you go. There you'll get all your tips right there.
It's funny because like you mentioned it's Frank Turek is one of the apologists who was saying that he has never met anybody who is deconstructed who didn't want to act in an
you mentioned that in your book as well
sexually, right?
Right. Yeah, we just want to sin.
The church itself is publishing these manifestos about how to bring back those who have flocked away from the church. Now you see COVID playing into it, right? When many of the churches were actually shut down, many were, or some people had a good excuse not to get up on Sunday mornings. Well, you find yourself then distancing, you're walking, stepping a little bit further away from this core, this normal, and you realize that you're looking at it from more of an objective vantage. You get a little bit more of a removed position, and you're like, hey, wait a minute. And I think that there's a huge group of people who are churched who feel betrayed by all of these MAGA evangelical bigots who are trying to strip women of their reproductive rights, and they're going after trans people, and they believe homosexuals are going to hell. And, that's not, even if they practice Christianity, that's not their Christianity. It's not anything they want to be a part of. So they're going to go practice their faith in a personal way, kind of a cafeteria, custom fitted religion. And that the church doesn't do that for them. So they're just going to walk away, and the church is in full freak out. Yeah. And they're going to become even more freaky and more desperate, more panicked. as the next several years and even next couple of decades go on. They're not going to go quietly for sure. So.
Well, they keep saying that the problem is in the delivery of the message, and we've got to change that somehow. The music, the sermons, so they got cooler, and they wear the skinny jeans, and they don't do sermons anymore. They give talks.
Yeah.
And they've changed the music. They've changed the lighting. The problem isn't in the delivery of the message. It's the message itself. And people are waking up to that and realizing it's trash and they want no part of it. That's it. It's that simple.
And then as soon as those churches like adopt those changes, you have other churches being like, oh, this church is trying to be like the world. My church was like that.
Yeah,
I love watching the churches fight with each other. It's all
great.
I can drive down the road. Here's the First Baptist Church. Here's the Free Will, but here's the Independent. Here's the Free Will Independent. Here's the Southern Baptist.
Yeah.
And then you've got, the Assembly of God, and there's the whole spectrum of Pentecostal, non-denominational. Some speak in tongues, some don't speak in tongues. Some require an interpreter, some don't. How do you baptize? Is it immersion? Is it water? Is it oil? A baby? Is it the age of accountability? Is salvation eternal, or can you lose your salvation?
Seth, there's your next book. There's your next book right there.
Yeah, no, the War of Churches.
Seriously.
Yeah,
I'm just
definitely.
saying, churches, it's like the God who is not the author of confusion is essentially the God of a Christian denomination of how many are there? Like 3,000 separate Christian denominations.
And growing.
And each one think they are the ones that are doing it right.
Yeah.
And no one else has got it like we do.
Dave, let me ask you this. I wrote a chapter in my latest book, and I make a declaration that I think apologetics and apologists, I think they alone are a refutation to the idea of a benevolent God, because they have this lofty idea that God appointed them as human ambassadors to explain God.
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't come and prove himself in a way that you and I can take to the bank. We need apologists to explain God. Meanwhile, you throw 50 of them in a room and ask them about the basics, Bible literacy and the Holy Spirit and the end times, the rapture, the nature of hell or heaven, blah, blah. I mean, whatever. And it's a freaking Thunderdome.
Oh, it's
I just think the whole circus of apologetics refutes the idea that there is a benevolent God who would intervene in our lives. He's not going to give these third stringers a few details and let them scrap it out on planet Earth. It's just stupid.
No, it is. And the whole idea that look at the volume of books that have been written just to explain the Bible.
Yeah.
In other words, the Bible is so complicated and convoluted and contradictory, it takes a library of books to try to explain what the Bible actually means, and they all disagree with each other.
Oh,
yeah. Well, and what happens if you were born before the apologetics explanation was published? You never had a chance. You never got to read the book to explain the book,
right?
Which means the billions of people born before your publication date of 2017 were essentially hosed.
You never listened to William Lane Craig's lectures.
Oh God,
sorry.
That's right. Yeah. How are you going to be saved?
Yeah, I know.
Too bad.
I know.
Too bad. Sorry, I'm trying to think where to go from here.
Did I say something to stop the conversation? I will often do that.
Well, no, I'm trying to pause.
Not this time.
I feel like Seth and I could just ramble on forever, but I'm trying to pause in case you have actual questions or want to steer the conversation where you want it to go. I don't want to hijack it.
I wanted. Well, sorry, I'm jumping in here because you gave me an opening. I want to know what your personal oh shit moment was when you look back at yourself in Christianity, like when you were Christian. What was your oh shit, I can't believe I said that to someone, or like a moment where you might have convinced someone else to stay in the church while you were like exiting? Like, was there any? Because I can tell you right now, I have a few. But
I got one.
You got one? Do it.
Well, just like in general, similar to the question I asked earlier. But I did the Ray Comfort Way of the Master Street witnessing, and literally spent my Saturdays walking around a strip mall or the mall or another shopping center, literally going up to random people, and some of them I converted to Christ. And I had people who were like, "You're really bothering me right now. I'm not trying to talk to you. Can you go away?" I was like, "Okay." Or like I'd interrupt a fucking like a dinner date or something, or no, not dinner, like a breakfast or brunch thing, and they were like, "Yeah, you're really bothering us. Can you not do that?" So those are the moments I look back and I'm like, God, fuck, I really wish I could find all of those people and just be like, I am so sorry. I didn't know any better. Please forgive me. You know, yeah, that's something I think about almost daily, and I want to.
I used to
Anyway.
produce fundraising videos and missions videos for churches, hundreds of churches all around the country, and I was good at it. You know, as a producer, I was able to put together these compelling pieces, and I look back now at some of the stuff that I'd produced that was really manipulating people further into a superstition, and it hurts my heart. And some of those things might be out there in some capacity for all I know, from many years ago. But and then I would participate in those vacuous prayers. Lord, we ask that you guide the hands of the surgeon as Uncle Bob goes in for an operation, and it makes no sense. I sounded like an idiot. Lord, we ask that you bless this food, nourish it to our bodies and our bodies to your service. What exactly is happening to the food that wouldn't happen anyway? Is it nourishing me more? Do the ingredients change?
I feel
You
like
should write a
fat
book about
shaming.
that.
I feel like if the food isn't blessed, you become fat.
Is that it?
I don't know.
Maybe you can
Probably.
reduce
Or you get food poisoning,
caloric content.
or it
We used
or
to
it
have a
just tastes bad.
chiropractor.
Yeah,
I did
if you pray
a series.
over rancid chicken, you won't get food poisoning.
I did a series of radio commercials for a local chiropractor who was a Christian, and his tagline was, "Doctors treat, God heals." I remember thinking
Jesus.
that's profound. Now I think this makes no sense. Doctors treat, God heals.
Then you shouldn't need a doctor.
Yeah.
Why would there
yeah.
be sickness if God heals?
My
Why would God have to
oh shit thing, I wrote about it in the book, and I actually remembered thinking it in the moment when I went to Moscow and was there passing out Bibles with a missionary there, and I felt like we were doing great work. And then they had us come in and actually preach in an elementary school.
You talked about this. Oh,
I did. And
yes.
I remember thinking as I'm leaving that country that I led them into 26 little children into a sinner's prayer, and the interpreter, repeating line by line what I said, and the little kids, the little robotic voices repeating, and I rejoiced in the moment because I felt like I'd led these kids to the Lord, and these little souls were going to go to heaven. But I remember leaving that country and thinking, what am I doing? What is wrong with this picture? This should feel better than it feels. Something's wrong here. And it was a very conflicting moment. And it was one of many that I wrote about, that I just, these little pockets of conflict that would rise up, and then I would whack them down like a whack-a-mole game. And then a few years later, another one would rise up. And that was a constant thing for me over the course of 3.5 decades.
I think too, it's interesting to look at and they're designed to be ever moving goalposts.
Yeah.
So that no matter what happens, there will be a silly putty, moldable explanation for it.
Yeah.
Right? Somebody's in a car wreck and they walk away without a scratch. God rescued and protected them. Praise Jesus. Let's say they're bruised and banged up, broken bones, but it's not worse. They should be dead. Praise God for keeping them alive. They're paralyzed for the rest of their life. Well, they should be dead.
God couldn't stop the paralyzing, but he stopped the death.
He must want to use this affliction, this light and momentary affliction, to produce a greater glory that far outweighs them all. And if he's killed, you know what? He's been called home to a better place where there are no car accidents. There's no pain, only joy.
God.
And we see this all the time. They're like, God answers prayer. Well, he may not answer it in the timing you want or in the way you want, or he may not answer, or the answer may arrive after you're dead. I mean, there's always this series of ever moving goalposts, so that no matter what happens, God is the hero in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that I used to speak in that language, and now I find it monumentally frustrating.
The language of the abused.
You used to talk like an idiot, didn't
I
you,
did.
Seth?
I did.
You should
We
name
all
your
did.
book that. That sounds
Okay.
like a really good title.
I will call my publisher, and
Call
we'll
him.
get a royalty check in the
It's a little
mail.
controversial, though. It might ruffle some feathers. Although
It
that
might
be a
get me
good thing.
banned on Facebook. Who knows?
That's possible. You wouldn't want that.
Yeah.
Mm.
Not the Book of Faces. How terrible.
Look out, your MySpace page will be next.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like MySpace might be a more open space. You might be able to post other things there.
I mean, Twitter's frustrating, but Twitter's never given me any trouble, right? It's freaking
Yeah.
Facebook, and I'm kind of pot committed because I have such a large community that functions there. But at the same time, I'm like, there's something broken in this machine, and I don't know how to get around it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, we'll figure it out. First world problems, I guess.
I got a question here from Correa. What advice would you give me talking to my mom when she asked why I'd want to take her hope away of getting to see my sister again?
Background information: her sister passed away 2 years ago, I believe.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
Well,
She says specifically for you guys, so I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
I get that kind of stuff all the time. Actually, talking about dying, and I think the simple answer to that is that we want to believe things that are true, not things that make us feel better. I mean, but it's not about taking away something from someone that makes them feel better. It's about when we have these ideas about a next life, an eternal life, something beyond this one, it's going to cause us to miss out on this one. And when someone is already passed and we want to see them again, it feels warm and fuzzy to tell them, yeah, you will. But on the surface, that's a lie. Or at least it's something we can't verify. We don't know that that's true. So I'd rather just be honest and say, you know what? I would rather you focus on the moments you had here in this life and remember them and savor them and try to make as many of those moments with the loved ones you have left, instead of focusing on something that may be coming down the road that we can't verify and probably isn't. And so that's kind of it's a hard question because you're dealing with people's loss and grief, and you never want to smash that on the head. But at the same time, I want to be honest with people, and I want to deal with things that are true.
I had somebody call the podcast a while back. I didn't get to use it in the final release because we had some audio glitches, but she had lost her mother, and she was missing the idea that they would be reunited in heaven. She's like, do you think that I'll ever see my mother again? And she started crying. And I told her, honestly, I said, well, the truth is that I'm not going to be the one to yank the rug out from underneath you on this one, right? I will be transparent and say that I have seen no evidence that there is an afterlife. But I'm not going to be the one to say it's not possible that one day, there may be something somewhere. But I'd like you to reframe how you see the time you had with your mother.
Mm-hmm.
She is physically gone, but her life made such an impact on you that piece of her lives in you. It has affected your ideals, your value system, your personality, your memories, your joy, your sadness. All of those things are echoes that will continue in you and ripple out of you to affect other people. And in that way, she does continue to live on. I also have an analogy for people who get hung up on this idea, what if there is no heaven? What if life is only temporary? How can it have any meaning if we know it's all futile and we're all going to go to dust, you know? And I like to say, you know, a beautiful piece of music, a beautiful song has a final note, but the song is still beautiful. A delicious meal has a final bite, right? But it doesn't mean that the meal wasn't delicious. Loving someone who dies before their time or before I do, that may be a temporary love, but would it have to be permanent to have tremendous value? Of course not. In fact, I think it is the idea of a finite life where we are on the clock and all the moments genuinely do count that make those moments even more critical. And that's why I tell people, you know, there isn't no evidence for life 2.0. So now's the time, you know, make the memory, set the goals, be yourself, find your identity, love who you love, carve your own path, carpe diem, you know, because we are all on the clock. And
you said that wrong, Cass.
Carpe the motherfucking diem.
If there is an afterlife, fine. You know, it's like when Christopher Hitchens was interviewed about, well, do you think there might be something? And he's like, you know, I like surprises, right? I mean, he wasn't totally closed-minded on the idea.
No.
But I really want to focus on the here and now. And if we lose people who are dear to us, I think we have to see that, you know, we had the honor of them in our lives, and the impact they made on us continues to live within us and ripple out to others as well. So, forgive the long answer.
No, those are great analogies. I think something that is finite has more value because it is finite, not because it's not.
Yeah.
That's exactly true. Anything that's more rare is more valuable. Diamonds are more valuable than gravel rocks.
I made a video not too long ago that got no.
Uh-oh, did I trigger her?
You brought up rocks.
Oh shit, she's having to bite her tongue.
Diamonds aren't really that rare. I just want to throw that out there. Diamonds aren't rare. It's just
I've had this conversation
people hoard
too,
them, and you just don't get them. Like if you said like tanzanite or like fucking like citrine, no, I'm with you there. But like
you've triggered the geoarchaeologist.
Uh-oh. My bad.
I
see some more questions there just to get Natty off her rock thing.
No, I was gonna say I made a video not too long ago that got a lot of attention. I just said ideas about reward and punishment in the afterlife originally had nothing to do with religion or how devoted you were to a religion, and it had everything to do with how good of a person you were here on earth.
Right.
Like those were the first ideas about reward and punishment in the afterlife. Just the good people will be rewarded, the bad people will be punished. Religion, like those ideas were developed by philosophers. Religion later adopted them.
Mm-hmm.
People found that helpful.
We did have a good question earlier, though. What was your? We have a resurrection question.
We missed the greater candle question. The greater candle question about a vengeful family.
Oh, right above it. Yeah. Holy cow. Okay. That would be interesting.
All right. And after this one, Seth, you said you would you needed to go after an hour.
I've got a few extra. We're good.
All right. Just wanted to respect your time.
I have an oppressively vengeful family that I escaped from. They tried to kill me, but I want my girls to know my parents. Why? I mean, I understand the emotion of it because we want them to live up to the ideals and the potential we have in our lives. But this, why in the world would you have to see life in terms of not just physical safety, but emotional safety and boundaries. Those kids are going to rely on you to keep them in an environment where they are not at risk of being physically or emotionally or intellectually abused. So, you know, there's this weird notion that, and it's very prevalent in the church, where families get to do things that they really shouldn't have permission to do. They're your parents and you have to put up with it, right? They're your mom and dad, and you have to respect them. You have to respect whatever they say and do because they're your parents. And I'm like, who wrote that? Like, when did people surrender the right to be respected and protected? So I think we don't frame this in terms of, are they my blood mom and dad? or whoever. It's, are they destructive people who are violating boundaries and endangering me in some way, and then potentially endangering my kids? Quite frankly, if you have to grieve that and move on and sever that tie, that's on them. They forced that. You did not. But you really need to think of yourself.
100% agree. I've said this many times, this idea that blood is thicker than water. Where did we get that idea? Where was that written?
Yeah.
Nothing's
thicker than blood.
Nothing's more important than family. Those phrases that we repeat without thinking, that's not true. That's not written in stone anywhere. And we don't need to abide by that if that's a dangerous situation, physically or emotionally. So you said it well, Seth. I think that's exactly right. This idea that we have to honor them because they're family, that's not right. You choose what's safe for yourself and your kids.
I think a lot of it's rooted in religion too, Fundy religion. You know, it's definitely rooted back to the Bible. Honor thy father and thy mother, kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, well, what if your father and your mother are malignant narcissists or abusers,
right?
Or whatever? I mean, I'm sorry, that's an extremely problematic way of viewing it. And you know, I don't think families don't have permission to tell us who we are and why. And while I want them to have a relationship with their grandparents, it's understandable why we want that. But we don't always get what we want. And a lot of times it's not our fault. And we have to realize that, grieve it, and set hard boundaries, and then realize that they exist for a reason. So,
yes.
We have a super chat.
You got a super chat. Thank you so much from Slow Mo Panda. Love the name. I had 2 instances of heart and kidney failure where I was clinically, took me a second,
Dead
upon arrival. 30 plus minutes before being revived against my DNR, do not resuscitate wishes. I didn't get that far. The experience I had at 27 and 30 made me go from indoctrinated
evangelical to only
atheist in the faith. This is why you're the co-host, Nat. This right here.
Well, I'd be curious to find out, what was it about that? You know, I mean, we know that people often who experience NDEs or after death experience whatever, you know, whether it's hypoxia, they're hallucinating, something else is going on. You know, what did you see or not see? But it's interesting that this sort of near death, or whatever you would call it, experience actually had the reverse effect, pushing you away from the idea of an afterlife and a heaven and you know, a spiritual realm, into atheism. I think that's interesting. So,
I can understand, just through personal experience, I understand the whole drawback away from religion when you have such a close encounter with death. Yeah. It's disconcerting, but it's also like, as soon as it's over, everyone wants to know what you saw and has no concern for you yourself. It's a weird dynamic when you wake up and everybody wants to know. It's like, oh, you were so close. Like, did you see heaven? Did you experience anything? What did you hear? What did you think about? And all you want to do is like, dude, I'm fucking tired. Can I just sleep? Like,
well, and the science behind much of that is interesting. Was it Scientific American that just posted this article where they were measuring something? Was it an MRI of a patient, some kind of a brain scan of a patient?
I think they had a seizure and they passed out, or they
died on the table. Yeah. And it wasn't planned, but they got
the data.
They able to visualize the brain at the moment this person had temporarily died, and they came back to life.
Yeah,
and
I'm slightly fixated.
And they were like, there is evidence that the brain was triggering recall of the memory centers of the brain, which is a wonderful, you know, it's not conclusive certainly, but it leans into the theory that, you know, the brain is simply retrieving information at times of trauma or lack of oxygen or whatever, and that many of the experiences that people believe are otherworldly are actually just products of the organic human brain. It's fascinating.
I felt like I was asleep, and then I was just in pain when I woke up. There was really nothing in between.
So you didn't go to heaven and get a vision and write a book? No.
I
You
mean,
didn't-
I
You
really
didn't go to
should
hell.
have. I really should have gotten rich just making some shit up. Like I should have.
They'll make
But
a movie and
I
everything.
apparently have better moral values than some small children.
You're gonna get her worked up again, Dave, and then it's
That's my job. Work people up.
So yeah,
It is.
I got time for one more if you guys want, and then I'll probably have to call it a night.
Yep, I'll go to one more.
All right, sounds good.
The resurrection one. and
Anybody have a question? I'm not seeing any in the chat.
There was
Unless-
one that was the resurrection one. I don't know if they want to talk about that or not.
No,
I think that
one.
speaks to what we'd spoken. Like if you can't prove a historical Jesus was the resurrection, I mean, I think that kind of fits in.
Yeah.
Oh.
The Bible said so.
I
It's
could
not the
talk on
answer.
that for hours.
Oh, samesies. I can
Right.
talk on the archaeology behind the understanding of a mass grave versus a fucking cave.
Yeah, we did a whole
no.
show on that.
We did a whole fucking show. Sorry, my language, but yeah, no,
A
it's
panel of 4 Christian apologists got together and responded to one of my TikToks on a
it was
like
hilarious.
hour-long YouTube video, and it was amazing. And I responded to that one with Nat and who else was it? Kat and
yeah. Well,
Anyway.
and Morgan came in a little bit
and
later.
more- yeah, it
yeah.
was amazing.
No.
Yeah, that's something I could talk about for a long time.
Yeah, I'm
will-
going to go with the answer that there was no resurrection.
Yeah.
Because that's not a thing that happens.
Oh, we were at Jim Majors. We talked about that with Jim.
Yeah,
as
Dr.
well.
Jim Majors. Yeah,
Thank you, Correa.
very cool guy.
I had a question from Douglas. Oh, that was the question from Douglas G. That was who I was referring to.
Oh, that's all right. Well,
Um,
I think honestly, if we could grab somebody by the shirt sleeves and shake them, I think it's that. It's the message that Dave has made the forefront of his activism, which is life is this brief, precious thing. And, it's so fragile and it's so amazing. And the idea of wasting it, either living for death because you've bought into this afterlife theology, living it in fear, living it under somebody else's control, being told who you are, what your value system is, this idea that families or cultures or tribes or religions can say, all right, you're going to think like this and feel like this and act like this and speak like this and vote like this and worship like this because this is how we raised you. And I think we just want to shake them and say, it's okay. You can look in the mirror and say, who am I? What are my values? When I came out of the Fundy faith, I had to go and say, well, now that I'm not a Christian, what are my values? What do I think about everything? Reproductive choice, legalization of drugs, gay marriage, the death penalty, right to die issues, foreign policy, other religions. And I had to go back and introduce me to myself and discover what's important to me. What do I want out of this life? And what do I want the world to look like? And, I think we just try to encourage other people that, you don't have to get spoon-fed this stuff from a third party. This is a journey that you can take on your own terms without apology. And whoever you are, you have value and worth. And that's probably the message I would want everyone to take away today is, don't let somebody else emotionally or even financially or physically blackmail you into looking like them. That just speaks to their insecurity. There's only one you, and you need to do that at your tempo, your temperature, for your reasons, without apology. So that's my shtick.
Yeah, I use this phrase, write your own story. And we let other people write our story. We've given the pen to Jesus. We've given the pen to our family. We've given the pen to our parents, a spouse, whatever. It's your story. It's the only one you have, and you get to write it. And if you don't like the way the story's being written, take the pen back away from whoever you gave it to and finish the story on your own. And that's kind of what Seth just said in a different way. It's your life. You have one take here. Make it happen. Make it count. If you don't like the way it's going, whatever it takes, change it. And I promise you, you can.
Yeah, what I like to say is life is an experience, not an investment. Because there's so many people who are spending their life trying to invest in an afterlife. They're denying themselves things that they would enjoy because they think it would hurt their chances in the afterlife. And they're robbing themselves of experiencing the beauty of life by doing that. And
you know what? The only reason
shame.
you say that is because you want to be sexually aberrant.
Yeah, you know, I just want
have all the sex. You want to have all the sex.
or orgies. I'm all for it. You know,
sorry, I got a text from Frank Turek, and he told me to.
Oh no, is he on Twitter again?
It's a great message, you know, and I just feel like, you know, life can be amazing and beautiful, and I think, you know, when we free our mind, what's that line? Free your mind, and your ass will follow. So I just would like to see people more free, you know, just liberated from these superstitious chains.
That's why we do what we do.
I appreciate the option and the honor of being able to have the conversation about that on the show. It's been a lot of fun for me. So.
Good. I'm
And
glad
Seth,
you enjoyed yourself.
Such beautiful messages, and then I'm just sitting here like, human beings aren't going to last long on this earth, so really nothing matters. But that bothers everyone. So you guys keep saying your phrases. I'm just gonna.
Yeah.
Nothing really matters.
That's what they said.
Anyone can. All right, never mind.
Seth,
All right,
Bevan,
guys.
Guys, we got
Bevan is
serenaded tonight.
Bevan is asking you to tell Natalie to come to the atheist convention and hang with her. So
Yeah, you know, it's hard for her to travel with me because we get to spend almost no time together when I'm at a conference.
that's what I'm saying. She didn't want to spend time with you anyway. She wants to spend time with Bevan. So bring her.
I will.
I was gonna say, I'll come and hang out. We can have
I'll
two
throw
Natalies and
that
Bevan
out.
hang
If
out.
I can,
Throw that
if I can
out.
find
Bevan's
a dog
asking.
sitter and she can get the time off, then I'm sure she will strongly consider it.
She'll hang with Bevan. And we
By the
can do our
way, he's
thing.
talking about conferences and conventions. There's a bunch coming up. I've got an events page at my website, thethinkingatheist.com, and they've got
Link is in the description.
Florida Free Thought, and I'll be speaking at Iowa State, the American Atheist Conventions.
That's the
coming
one
up.
I was talking about. I'll be there too, and Captain
There's-
will be. So yeah.
There's a conference on death, grief, and belief, and some others. Anyway, I've listed a bunch of those. And if you know of some more, you know, relatively significant events on the horizon, let me know, and I'll add them to the calendar. So.
Awesome.
Very cool. Well, thank you both for coming on today.
fun.
This was it's a really cool conversation. Might be my favorite show ever to this date. Oh, I just lost $20.
Oh no!
I say that about all my shows. This is my favorite one ever.
No, it's
Anyway.
been a lot of fun. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. I'll skip the rest of that prayer. But
Thank
May
you.
his noodly appendages bless you, raw men.
Guide you.
good night, guys. It was good to see
Good
you.
to see you guys. Thanks.
Good night,
Seth.
everybody.
Thanks, Natty. See you, Seth.